The Title Block, episode number 8, Allan Stichbury, part 2.
It's gonna snow tonight. I know I will be liking it. So let's go. Let's go. Step out of the house. Step into the wild. Put on that dress tonight. The one your mom don't like. I'll see you at the lights.
Welcome back to The Title Block, a podcast about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. I'm your host, Michael Kruse, and today I finish my interview with designer Allan Stichbury from Victoria, British Columbia. The audio is a bit better on this one, but still a bit low quality. Again, this problem has been fixed for future episodes. You can find the show notes at thetitleBlock.com/episodes. But now here is my chat with Allan as we picked up this conversation talking about his approach to building a relationship with a director and his start as an educator.
Okay, so you start instructing at Victoria. Now, was this a tenure track position to begin with? Was that the idea, or you didn't become a tenure professor until much later, right?
It took a few years, but it was a tenure track position that I signed up for. Yeah.
Now, did you inherit somebody else's idea of what the program should be when they were teaching design, or did you have an ability or the opportunity to create your own kind of program for teaching design?
Oh, I was very much able to create my own program. I inherited course numbers and vague course description, but only just like a calendar description. So how to go about that was entirely up to me.
And did you have an idea of where you wanted to go from the beginning, or was it something you had to sort of figure out?
Oh, I certainly had to figure it out, and it was definitely a bit of trial and error. It was a combination of trying to, part of what I was doing, I think, in the beginning years was taking what I learned at U of A and putting it into UVic and finding out what of that worked and what didn't work.
And what was important to you? Like, what did you feel were the key things you wanted the students in the program to go away with?
I think the thing that I wanted them to go away with is the same as I really want them to go away with today. And the statement that I made earlier, and that is that ultimately when we work on a show, we have to turn it into we and our and us and take away the I.
Terrific. And how do you as a designer try to embody that when you work? Like, is that a number of people? I mean, the relationship that you make on the show is kind of the key determinant of that.
Yeah.
Of that kind of factor. But how do you foster that when you work with a director?
It's always going to be a little different because each director is a different person, while I remain the same person. So it's various attempts to try to get it to become we, whether it's, as I talked about with Wings, saying to the director, this is all I've got. If you don't like it, I'm happy to withdraw and you can go somewhere else, in hopes that they will go for it and they will embrace it, or it's sharing ideas and working together, sitting down in the studio for a long weekend or a week and putting the set together with the director, and anything in between. A lot of it is trying to figure out some way that you can communicate with that director. The director is your closest partner. It's like an instant life partner, and you've got to figure out some way that at least for the next few months that you can live together and share and cooperate, collaborate without it being forced.
And you've developed this relationship with Dennis Garnham. I mean, we spoke about that before the break. And how did you develop that? I mean, he was. Tell me again about how you met and how you guys started working together up until, and then we can talk about maybe the wars.
Sure.
A little bit.
We met in Winnipeg, as I said. He was a young undergraduate student out of UVic. I was designing the lighting for production of Mornings at 7. Stephen Schipper was directing. Dennis was assisting. And when I got to Victoria, of course, Dennis was a student in my design class. He was a directing student, but as a directing student, he was obliged to take a design class, and so there he was. Since that time, I mean, Dennis and I formed a bit of a working bond, and it was when he got his first big break to do a large show, doing Three Tall Women at MTC, and Dennis called me up and said, I really need you to design this show. And he came out to Victoria, and we worked together for, I don't know, maybe a week or so, trying to work it out. And it was a real, true shared collaboration. I brought what I brought, he brought what he brought, and in the end, I don't think that either one of us could say who did what. Mm-hmm. It truly was a collaborative production, and that was 10 years after starting it at UVic.
Now, this is like a couple. We've spoken about this about this point a couple times, about this idea of a collaboration and about a shared ideas in one project. How do you feel about auteurs, like people who have a singular vision and want the people around them to sort of fulfill that vision? I mean, this has produced some pretty extraordinary works in Canada, and yet everybody who, I mean, unless you sort of drink the Kool-Aid, as it were, it can set up some real conflicts within the team. I mean, I think it's probably an obvious statement to say it has value, but do you think that can work as well, or is it not something you're not interested in being a part of?
It's certainly not who I am. I really do love the working with somebody and taking their ideas and my ideas, and maybe I hear something from them and it's not necessarily the way they thought it would come out, but I hear it through my own ears and it comes out in another way, and then we can talk about it. So it's a matter of hearing things, and then me through drawings and models and in whatever way I can say, okay, this is what I think I heard from you through my voice, and I think that this is what it can do. This is what I think design, set design particularly, or lighting design, or whichever design element can contribute to what it is that you want to say. But set design, each design element has its own values and strengths, and it can't do the whole story. It's a combination of things that are put together to tell the story.
Right. And you design, I mean, you've designed sets and lighting and costumes as well, is that right? So you're a total production designer. You've done projections before.
Yep.
How do you feel, like, I know that you've got several credits, sometimes combined, sometimes separate, in your resume. Do you enjoy, is there one you enjoy more? Do you enjoy being a production designer and sort of having creative control in collaboration with the director of all the elements? Or is it, maybe it's not an and/or thing, but which one do you like better? Do you like doing the entire thing, or do you gain greater satisfaction from being one element in the bigger picture?
I think I most enjoy doing one element in the bigger picture and sharing it with other people. I've worked a lot with Kevin Lamotte, And what Kevin brings to the lighting of a show is extraordinary. And, we can talk about it, and I can provide photographs and artwork, and he stimulates me with his great knowledge of art, and we can go back and forth, say, yeah, I think it should look like this painting by so and so, and he brings that expertise. And as we've moved through the decades, the need to be an expert in something has also increased as we go to these bigger shows. The technical and the design knowledge of a specific area becomes increasingly important. So I find now that I am most happy when I'm one of a group of designers working on a show.
And how did you guys collaborate? So let's talk about The Wars. This is the Timothy Finley book that was made into a stage play, and it had it was a very, very heavy design show from what I understand. I didn't see it, but I know you worked with Kevin and Dennis both on this project. Tell me how you came to be on the project, and your approach as a group to sort of tackle this really kind of impressionistic or expressionistic, I guess, novel.
Well, I guess I was one of those designers right at that particular time that we were doing the Wars who was pretty comfortable looking at these massive stories and how do we go about telling this massive story. Dennis and I had already established a good working relationship, and so he turned to me and asked me if I would do the design for the show. We met and we talked, and he came out to Victoria again, much like the previous time, and we worked together for the better part of a week in the studio, and we came up with a design for the show, which I knew was way over budget. Probably, I stopped making guesses. I knew that we were at least 200% over. But, Dennis was determined. He was a new artistic director at Theatre Calgary. He was authoring this piece. It was very important to him, and he wanted to go ahead with the design that we'd worked out, even though it was grotesquely over budget in my mind. I couldn't convince him that it was grossly over budget, and I didn't really work hard at that. I thought, okay, Dennis, it's over budget, but I'm not going to go on about that with you because that's not the relationship that we're in right now. So we went back I sent it into Theatre Calgary, and the TV at the time, Aaron Newbert, started costing the show. And by the time he reached 200% over budget and was maybe 2/3 of the way through the show, he just stopped estimating. So there was scheduled at that point in time that because it was a new piece, we were going to do a bit of a workshop. So we all came to Calgary, the sound designer, lighting designer, projection designer, costume designer, most of the actors, all showed up in Calgary to do this workshop. And it was at that workshop that it was made clear that the show had to be redesigned because there was just no way in the world that we could possibly afford what we were designing. And it was the sound designer, interestingly enough, who really started the ball rolling. His name is Scott Killian, out of New York or New Jersey, and describing this scene and showing it in this model that was ridiculously expensive. And he said, "Oh, I can do that. We can just do that with this." And then Kevin chimes in, "Oh, and I can add some light here, and we could do that." And by the end of those meetings, which were a couple or 3-4 hours long, there was the basis of a new design for the show that was more exciting than the set trying to tell the whole story, because we now had a real important role for projections, coupled with a role for lighting and sound and costume. Everybody had their piece of the story to tell and was doing what they could do best. Sets are clunky to change at the best of times, but lighting can change in a heartbeat. Sound can stir up an emotion in us that takes a set $1 million to produce, and with 10 notes, the sound can make that happen for us. The Wars was a real example of a team coming together and sticking with it and working together, totally separately, but working together, everybody trying to tell the same story, using what they do best to make that story happen.
That's incredible, and that really speaks to your point about having a sort of distributed collaboration, and how that could be much more productive than being an auteur or being, a production designer responsible for all these different elements.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just the designers too. It's the contribution of production staff. I can't say enough about Aaron Newbert, who was the TD at Theatre Calgary at that time, is now production manager / TD. His contribution to the show, his commitment to making it happen, to the scenic artists, to everybody that just dug in and just said, yeah, we're going to do this. This is an amazing story to tell, and everybody is doing their thing, and so we will too. Right.
Well, that's terrific. And tell me about the piece itself. So I know this is a sound based medium that we're speaking about, and we can't really talk about the pictures too much without doing them a disservice. But what was the interesting thing I find about theater, and I think that sets it apart from film and television and YouTube and the other kind of more popular or populist media, is its ability to take risks and tell a story in a very non-traditional, maybe non-linear, certainly expressionistic way that is not, just representational. I get the feeling this is where you guys went, especially with all these different elements. Do you think it was a success? And could you describe sort of the general approach to the visuals?
Sure, I can give it a shot. I think it was a success. I don't think that it's going to see a lot of companies doing the piece. It's too large. It's too big for most people to handle. It's a little bit of a scary piece, but it was. We created a set that was a series of frames of rusted metal. So we saw it all within this framework of layers of rusted metal. Inside of that, there was at the beginning of the play, as we're in Canada, there was just a kind of scrap of carpet on the floor, kind of sort of representing earth and grass and things like that. And as we moved out of Canada, that went away, and we just went to a big black void of carpet. And there was lots of opportunity for lighting and sound and projection. There were screens which would come in, cut scrims, pieces of beautiful scrim that poor scenic artists had to chop up, and rear projection screens that I would go up on stage and I would draw on them with chalk, and then somebody would take a pair of scissors to these brand new RP screens. There was a scene where they go down into a bomb crater, and then the gas attack happens. So a wall flies up, and the men are at the back, about 8 feet up in the air. They put down ladders, and they come down the ladders into the crater. And the projection designer has created a little bit of a hint of those classic images from the First World War that we see on those battlefields. And Kevin's got lights going off. There's bits of strobe bombs and things exploding. The men all get down in, And then Aaron Newbert and his genius has got this behemoth of a fog machine, a dry ice CO2 machine that starts pumping out volumes of dry ice like CO2 that cascades over this wall and down onto the main part of the stage, filling the stage about 6.5 to 7 feet deep in dry ice like fog. And there's all the sound and the whistling and the screaming of bombs and things going off. And through all of this, we can still hear the men down in the pit. And then a snow machine starts up, and the fog starts dissipating as snow starts to fall on the stage. And it's just that sort of soap bubble kind of snow that comes down. The fog goes away. The men are there. And we almost instantly then go to an imagined scene where we're back in Canada in the barn. And so to create the barn, all that happened was ladders flew in, and on each of these wooden ladders were dozens and dozens of flickering candles, all fake candles, of course, but these flickering candles come in and the projection image starts to change. We move into this beautiful light that Kevin creates and the soft sounds from Scott of the back in Canada in the winter in the barn. And we just go someplace else. And it all just happens seamlessly, and massive scene changes that Dennis choreographed where, instead of having to stop to set up the bunker or the thing, it's all about the actors actually bringing that piece on with them. Or a scene in a ship, which is the hold of the ship, where all it is Kevin creates one square of light on stage, and the rest of it is in absolute pitch black with beautiful sound. It's not that the set didn't have major elements. There was a horse being loaded onto a ship, which was a flown and tracked gigantic horse box that came across the stage. But inside that box was a speaker, and inside that box were a bunch of par cans, and so that box became activated. Mm-hmm. Again, it was all part and parcel of everyone, no one ever stopping, even though I think at times we thought the tech would never end on the show. That I think Kevin started to lose his mind at some point. Would we ever actually get this scene right? But it did. It really did get right, and there were some astounding things combined with some beautiful performances. People like Meg Rowe, just killing you. She's in this wheelchair, coming out of the gas attack, but into the barn, and it was absolutely beautiful and heart-wrenching. And Dennis loves a bit of good beauty and a bit of tears.
Yeah, well, that's terrific. Those should be a part of everything. I think we have to create beautiful things for people to really carry them away. I want to switch tack just a little bit and just go back to this idea of designer training, and ask a question about the difference between training an undergrad, somebody who's just come into maybe has no experience in the theater, and versus training somebody in graduate work. You as a graduate, you have mentored or you've supervised a number of graduates at UVic. How do you approach? What's the difference between your approach of supervising somebody doing graduate work and somebody who's doing their original training in theater?
Supervising graduate work, it's as much as anything, it's trying to keep your fingers out of the pie and really giving them the rein to explore what they need to explore, to give them encouragement and to give them opportunities, to try to make sure that you put them on the right kind of project, but don't interfere too much in what they do. Most of the time today with graduate students coming into university design programs, what they really need is what we got the opportunity to do back in the 70s, which was to design at a reasonable scale. Undergraduates, typically when they get out of school, are lucky if they can do some fringe kind of shows or one-off group of people get together and produce something on extremely limited budgets. So what I think a graduate student needs out of a graduate program is the opportunity to stretch and push themselves to actually build some kind of a portfolio, to see how far they can go. Undergraduate, they need pure raw training in drawing, in reading a script, in making models, in communication. How do you communicate with a director? How do you understand the psychology? How do you get inside a director's head and let them inside yours? And the most important thing that the undergraduates need is all those good hardcore bits of information about where to find things, how to find things, how to get excited about drawing, how to get excited about model making. You don't have to know everything, but you have to know some things so that you can stretch yourself to the next thing. You can't give them creativity. You can't teach them creativity, but you can get them excited about art and art history and what those things mean, about going to the art gallery and seeing some amazing new contemporary art piece and saying, damn, there's something in that. I'm going to be able to use that someday. Don't know when. Maybe I'll just push it into my next project randomly and I'll be told it's wrong. But at least I'm seeing those things.
And speaking of sort of giving people opportunities to grow, you have in the past little while expanded or made forays into Thailand.
Yes.
Tell me how you ended up doing theater in Thailand.
It was the dean of the University of Victoria has always been extraordinarily good to me, which is why I managed to stay here since 1988. They've always encouraged me to go off and do work as a theater designer. But 2004, 2005, the dean, who's also a theater designer, Giles Hoja, said, I really want you to go to Bangkok. I want you to go and on this exchange program with Chulalongkorn University. They desperately need a lighting designer. Mm-hmm. And he made it very seductive. He made it so that I couldn't say no. And so I went. I went there to design a show, to teach set design and lighting design. Not all the courses in the department, but some courses. And I had the opportunity to work, I was given the opportunity to work with a director there, named Kruse, Pornrat Damrang, but better known as Kruse. And she created a play called Sita Siram, or in brackets, it was also subtitled Unframe the Women. And there were at least 4 different versions of this play, because she was writing it and as we went and going to direct it. It's vaguely who are modern women in relationship to Sita, and Sita is the leading female character in the Ramayana, which the Thais called Ramakin, the giant book, the giant story. And so I made a desperate attempt to read the Ramayana or the Ramakien and failed miserably. But I found a children's book that was used in elementary school to try to explain it, and so that became my knowledge of Sita. But so there were these 4 versions of the script, and each one had been roughly translated into English, and they all seemed completely different to me. So I sat down with Kruse, and she said to me, "Well, I like your house." And I said, "What?" I said, "Well, I like your house. Could you do something like you've done with your house?" I said, "You want my house on stage?" She said, "No, I just like your design sense." And so I figured out that the only way to have this communication was I got a number of design books out from the Prague Quadrennial every year. Every Prague Quadrennial, the British had put out a book of their designs, these beautiful books. And so I passed them all to Kruse and asked her to just flip through the books and pick out images that she liked. Not based on Sita Siram, but just things that she enjoyed. And if possible, give me a word as to why she liked it. And so she did. She went through the books, came back about a week later, and they were all filled with Post-it notes of, here's this image, I like this texture, I like texture, texture is exciting. And another one might be color, another one might be height or size, or maybe that there was a puppet in one. Anyway, by the end of that, I don't think I knew anything more than I did to begin with. But I had some sense of things that she liked, and I was in Bangkok first time. I'm looking around at everything. I can't stop myself being excited by buildings, by sounds, by smells, by sewer grates, by anything and everything that I saw. So I said to Kruse, okay, so now should we meet and try to figure out which script you're going to do and what the scenes are? And she said, no. I said, well, what do you want? She said, I want you to design something. Just show me something. So I did. I made a model. And the model that I did was based loosely on those things that seemed to excite her, textures or whatever. But it was fundamentally what I saw of Bangkok. So there was a big circle, there were some rocks, there was some sand, there was bamboo, there were some grates in the floor that could all move. And she took one look at it and she said, okay, now I know how to do the play. And I would go to rehearsals. I didn't understand any Thai. It was all in Thai. And bit by bit, I started to understand what she was doing. And it was another product of someone using what was there, and she used it as part of the creation of the work, just as she used the improv that she'd done with actors previously. The scenic design and the lighting design later became part of the creation of Sita Siram, the play.
Right. It seems to be a bit, it's a different approach to certainly the traditional kind of English theater.
Oh. Get
a script, have a set of requirements.
It was, and I didn't really realize at the time, but Kruse comes from an applied theater background where the making of a play is normal. It's part of what they do. They get together and they will create a piece of theater based on an idea, on a theme, and she very much believes that design should have as much a contribution, the aesthetic should be as much of a contribution to that creation of a piece of theater as the writing and the acting and everybody else, and that we can all make a contribution. It's her job as director to say yes or no and to stimulate and guide it, but it's a whole group project. So that was my introduction to Thailand. And then after that show, which was an enormous amount of work and crazy because I never knew what was going on. I'm drafting for the first time in metric, which by the way is incredibly simple, and much better than the imperial system. It takes about 20 minutes to adjust to the metric system, but the carpenter doesn't speak Thai, so everything that I do, it has to be communicated through drawings and pictures and things. But as I'm going through, Kruse starts to feel that I'm going to get bored teaching just my 2 classes now that I've done the show. So she gets me to come down and do some, I guess you'd say, consulting on a production of a mask dance, a Thai traditional mask dance downtown at the Royal Theatre. And so that was exciting. And she took me to other companies and I was doing workshops, and then she took me to other universities where I taught some other classes. And eventually by 2006, I started going back and forth between Thailand and Canada. I was back working at UVic, but every month or 2, I would run back to Thailand to work on a show. I got to design a production of Hanuman the Mighty. Hanuman is the trickster in the Rama King and the Thai traditional mask dance. It's the most popular piece. Anyway, there was this new piece being created to honor the king on his birthday, and so we created this piece, and I first time trying to design Thai traditional mask dance. All I'd had was this one brief introduction where I was supposedly consulting on a piece, but they gave me a brilliant young assistant, and I designed my brains out on Thai mask dance, and my assistant made it more Thai, and that show was enormously successful. It ended up running for 2.5 years in Bangkok at the Royal Theatre. And as it turns out, I'm told, I have no reason not to believe it, that I'm the only white guy to ever actually design traditional mask dance at the Royal Theatre. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I started doing more and more shows back and forth, and then it seemed to all just kind of dry up that connection. The connection with Chulalongkorn wasn't that solid anymore. But a couple of our students of mine from Bangkok, from Chulalongkorn, came to Canada to do their master's degrees at UVic. As happens often with other countries, it's those connections that you make either through things like the Prague Quadrennial or visiting professors or your travels that bring you to some other place in the world. And they begin to open your eyes to new possibilities and new things that you never had considered before. Anyway, these kids, they're full adults now, got excited by what might happen if they came to Canada. So I talked to John Avery at the Banff Centre, and we actually set up a program whereby they did a year at the Banff Centre, training, getting their English up a little bit better, and learning about the technology and the technical equipment that we have available here in Canada, and was at that point relatively rare in Thailand, certainly not rare now. But and then they came to UVic and did their master's degrees, and one of those people is Bobby Limkun, and she landed a job teaching design at Bangkok University. And she asked me, she phoned me up and said, what would you think about doing an exchange program between UVic and Bangkok University? And anyway, to make a long story short, I visited, I checked it out, and it seemed like a really great connection. I had some great meetings with people at Bangkok University, and we set up a full-on exchange program for Canadian students to go to study and work at Bangkok University, and for Thais to come to UVic and do the same kind of thing here. And the first two students just came back a couple of days ago from Bangkok, and they didn't want to leave. They had a fantastic time.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. And what a great opportunity to sort of give Canadian design students as well to sort of see outside ourselves. I'm wondering if you could speak. I know that your work on the Prague Quadrennial, you were the Commissioner General at one point for Canada. What in those kind of being exposed to those kind of international efforts, what do you think that Canada can learn from the international theatrical community, and what do you think we can teach them, if anything?
Don't try to teach. You will if you don't try, but if you try, you will annoy everybody. Mm-hmm. That would be the first thing I would say. But be open-minded and open your eyes, open your mind. Let those other influences in. Don't try to prejudge them. Don't try to judge them in any way as they're coming at you. Just try desperately to be present, to let it wash over you, to leave yourself open to the possibility that a Kruse will just say, well, just design me something from this, and then let me work with it. And to going to a Prague Quadrennial, and whether you're a student or a senior designer, see something that excites you. Don't even necessarily know why it excites you. Ask somebody else, why does it excite me? What is it about this thing that's making me look at it? Why is it interesting to me? You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be open and ask the questions, both of other people and of yourself. There's nothing else in the world like the Prague Quadrennial for young designers or senior designers to go to open your mind. The world stage design is mostly electronic, and it's just not the same. The Quadrennial has the cachet. It's the place where everybody goes, and they hang out, whether you're young or old. You go and you sit in the bar, or you eat dinner with somebody from another country. Listen to their stories. They'll ask you some stories. Don't you tell them your stories, they'll tell you theirs. I think that we have lots to offer, but we have to also understand that we're in a very different place than most of these countries. Most of the countries exhibiting have large populations in a small area. We have a relatively small population spread over a massive area. They can have influences that happen super fast, and everybody knows everybody else. In Canada, we do know everybody else, but the influence across the country takes a long time. Today, we can get those influences more quickly and more cheaply, unfortunately, by getting in an airplane going to Germany than we can to go to Halifax. Mm-hmm. But people look at what we do in Canada, and they're excited, they're impressed, and their imaginations are stirred by it, and we just need to respect that our work is good. We do good stuff, and you see it in an exhibition like the Quadrennial. And up till now, our exhibitions haven't been the most exciting, but there's been great work in it, and people recognize the work. The Europeans, being closer by, can create mad, crazy exhibitions where it's as much about how it's exhibited as what's exhibited. But this coming year we have a new young Commissioner General, Patrick DeVores, who was a student at UVic, then did his master's at U of A. He's taking over. He's got an exciting idea as to how the exhibition is going to be curated, how it's going to be displayed, and I'm proud to be on the jury with Astrid Jansen and Teresa Persbelska and myself to select the work, and I think that Canada could have a great exhibition this time.
Oh, that's terrific. I want to just before we wrap up, I want to talk about your involvement in the Associated Designers of Canada. You were a member of the executive and a president during the 90s. Yep. And now you told me before that you were sort of a reluctant member earlier. What do you think is the place for an organization that is sort of half association, half kind of? It's a labor organization. It has a contract that everyone sort of agrees upon and negotiates with PAC, the Professional Association of Canadian Theatre. How did you come to the realization that the ADC is an organization that not only you want to be a member of, but that is an important enough that you want to lead it for a period of time?
Well, I was reluctant because everything was so easy for me in Edmonton at the time. I didn't feel like I needed to contribute any money to some organization that was going to try to make it better for designers. My life was actually pretty darn good. But by the time I arrived and started going to Toronto, I discovered that there were a lot of us, and we needed to work together to some extent to try to make it better for each of us, and to set some standards to create at least a Canadian standard, so that if you said you were a designer, it meant something. And so I got more and more active with the association and began to realize that it was also important to reach out to younger designers. And it was while I was president or vice president, I can't remember which, that we created the apprentice member category to try to get information to a younger group of designers, and to keep up the idea that being a designer meant something and that you were part of a group. And that group, while not agreeing on much of anything, would agree on some things, like designers should get paid some money and designers should produce good quality work. And as an association, we've never got into the notion of the aesthetic of the work, but just the quality of the communication. Over the years, ADC started originally to actually be a union. It was through CBC that it started, and QP then eventually took over that, and ADC virtually died. ADC restarted as an association. Lots of members don't want to be a union. They don't want that kind of enforced rules. They like this kind of loose association. It's a difficult balance to achieve, to be both kind of a labor union some days and on some issues, and a kind of artist support group on other days.
And what's your sort of thought on this idea of a closed shop versus open shop? I mean, it's not we're not a union, or I should say the ADC is not a union. I used to be a member. I'm no longer a member. But like equity is more or less a closed shop. There's special dispensation that's very minor, but you have to be an equity member to really work in any kind of major Canadian theater. And would you like to see that the same way for designers? or?
I think it is possible. I think it, at this point in time, is possible only in the big houses, the A's, the A pluses, the Shaw Festival, Stratford Festivals, the Citadel Theatres, the MTCs, the big A houses and bigger. There, a closed shop, I think, is possible. Those companies could afford a small fee if they were to hire somebody who was not an ADC member. I wouldn't want to see the doors closed to non-members. I would want to see, but I do think it's possible for those larger companies to make that small fee payment to help ADC, because I think ADC does a lot for the theater in this country. I think it does make it a better place, and I do, for everybody, audience, actors, production staff, everybody. And I think that the only way to keep supporting ADC is to get some money in its coffers to take it to the next step. And maybe a closed shop in those big houses is a way to get that money in. But I can't see how it can be enforced or that it could be productive in the small houses.
I'll see you at last.
And that wraps up my interview with Allan Stichbury, speaking to me via a Skype call from Victoria, British Columbia. Next time we feature the first 2 episodes of a panel discussion from this year's Canadian Institute for Theatre Technology Conference in Ottawa, Ontario, focusing on projection and the future for design. It's not one to miss. The music for this podcast is PodSafe music from the band 1990s called See You at the Lights. You can find them at roughtraderecords.com/the 1990s. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It'll help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theatre design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at the Title Block CA and on Facebook.com/the Title Block Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to thetitleBlock@gmail.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you wade through the wall of smoke to find the switch for the fogger that someone left on in the studio over lunch. I'm Michael Kruse, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block.